And now we will have Reverend G speaking about our beloved community in Us versus Them.
Good morning and welcome. If you are only joining us now, I'm Reverend G, and I am so delighted that you are choosing to spend this time with us. And I am, as I'm sitting here, watching the unfolding of our service, I'm so grateful that I get to be part of this community of caring people, a community of forward-thinking people. And I also wonder what possessed me to follow Amanda Gorman's poem. She is so incredibly talented, bright. She has a depth of soul and spirit and knowledge, and I'm just blown away by her words. I'm sure so are you. Anyway, it is January, and our theme for January is Beloved Community. And I was wondering what would stand in the way of building the beloved community. What is the big obstacle of creating it, of making it happen? So, of course, there is this us versus them thinking, and this is happening on many levels. It's happening on the nuclear level within families. It's happening on much larger scales within nations. So let us go a little bit back in time, like a lot, and take a look at what, in what sort of communities humans lived the longest for. So about 2 million years ago, Homo sapiens showed up on our planet, and Homo sapiens, for the longest time, they are our ancestors, lived in little bands, maybe a few dozen people, and they foraged together, they lived together, they had loyalties to each other, they understood life within this context of a few dozen people living together. Then bands of people joined together and formed tribes. And tribes would be maybe a couple thousand people. So the bands of who had several dozen people in them joined together. They still pretty much lived separate, autonomous lives, these bands. But if danger came, then the tribe called upon these bands who have forged relationships and connections and promises with each other. And so then the tribe gathered, and then the tribe together defended the territory or defended against whatever danger they faced in that time. And this was up to about 5,000 years ago. This was the form, the social network within which Homo sapiens, our ancestors, humans, lived. And about 5,000 years ago, they started developing agricultural communities. And that is the first time when a lot of humans started living together in a more cohesive way, more in a smaller area, a lot of humans, because they no longer needed to forage. In fact, they had to stay together so they could work the lands and grow whatever crops they planted. So this is the first time that humans come together in larger numbers. So for instance, there was the Yellow River in China, and there were these tribes that lived by the river. They had to live by the river because the river meant life. It was water. They could water their crops. And so they would farm the land next to the river and its tributaries. The problem was, however, the river was out of control. Sometimes too much water came and everything flooded and everybody's livelihood was endangered. Or there was too little rain and then there was a tremendous drought and everybody's livelihood was endangered again. So these tribes came together and they said, well, alone, individually, there's no tribe big enough and powerful enough to do anything about this river situation. But if all the tribes join in, and then they build dams, they shape the river so they could defend against tremendous drought or tremendous floods. They realize that as long as they're isolated and they try to do things on their own, they can't impact the river. So these tribes joined forces and together built dams and whatever it took to make life possible along the river and its tributaries. And this is the first time that a nation is formed. And then this, of course, is happening all over, and really nations are not that old. In Europe, nations are about 1,000 years old or maybe a little bit longer, but really none of them are that old. And well, we all know how young our nation here is in North America. So living in as a nation is fairly new to humanity. And we did it because we realized that we can do more together than we can do alone. So nationalism has its bright side. And the bright side is this. I contribute my money, my taxes. I put it into this big pot that the government collects. And then somebody in Texas benefits from it because they go on food stamps or they collect unemployment. And I, who will never meet this person in Texas, have helped them. Now think about this. For the vast majority of our history as humanity, we lived in bands, then in tribes that were longer, but people knew each other. And if we know each other, we are more likely to help each other. If we don't know somebody, it is just not very natural to us to want to help them. And nationalism brought that about. Nationalism made this possible, that I, who now lives in a country of 250 million people or more, I contribute to the 250 million, most of whom I have never met, nor will I ever meet, and I contribute to it. My money builds roads somewhere else in the country for somebody else to drive on. I may never drive on those roads, but I contribute to that. I contribute to the welfare of a very large number of people. And this is a very good side, a very bright side of nationalism. The problem is when nationalism is misinterpreted and it is radicalized. That is the problem. So the good side of nationalism is this, that we end up caring for people who we will never meet, have never met, and we contribute to their well-being. That's the bright side of nationalism. The dark side of nationalism, the radicalized side of nationalism, is this. We are superior to any other nation. On the bright side of nationalism, we recognize that we are unique. We have gifts, we have talents, we have strengths, we have weaknesses. We are unique. But it doesn't mean that we are superior or inferior to any other nations. On the dark side of nationalism, we are superior. We are better. We are smarter. If we are smarter and superior, then the others are inferior. So when they make an argument, we don't have to listen to them anymore because they're stupid. They are less than. On the bright side of nationalism, when political parties fight for power and campaign for people's votes, this is what they say. Well, I think that my opponent's ideas are bad. I may even think that his idea or her ideas are stupid, but I don't dislike them. I don't hate them. I just really, really disagree with them. That's on the bright side of nationalism. On the dark side of nationalism, my opponent is an idiot and furthermore is evil. My opponent is not a patriot. I am the patriot. I am the only one who truly loves you and truly loves this nation, and the other one is evilized. That's on the dark side of nationalism. So what happens then, on the dark side of nationalism, if there is a fissure, if there is a wound in the nation's body, on the dark side of nationalism, the political power takes the finger and bothers that wound and opens it up and makes it worse and makes it fester even more. So people are radicalized and they can no longer come together, but they are separate in their camps. On the bright side of nationalism, if there is a wound in the nation's body, then people come together to heal it, to see it, recognize it, and heal it. Find ways to come together and strengthen this one body. On the dark side of nationalism, we no longer have answers for global problems. For instance, on the dark side of nationalism, we must deny global warming. Because on the dark side of nationalism, we're also isolationists. We isolate from other nations. And global warming, even in its name, is there, global warming. No single nation can find a solution for global warming. There must be a cooperation of all the nations. So really what's happening right now is, on a global level, the same Yellow River problem. But no tribe alone could control the Yellow River. But if the tribes came together, joined forces, then they could make changes within the patterns of the Yellow River to mitigate floods and droughts. Well, it's the same thing now. No nation alone can really, and here's the church dog, no nation alone can control global warming. No nation alone can do much about it. The nations have to come together and join forces and mitigate the bad sides of global warming, which is, well, it's all bad. But if you're on the dark side of nationalism, you don't cooperate with other nations because we're superior to them. Remember, they're all idiots. They're less than us. They're not as good as us. They make bad choices. We are the ones that make the good choices. So the only option left for nations who embrace the dark side of nationalism is to deny global warming. If I deny it, they must deny it because they don't have solutions, right? They cannot admit that they have no solutions because they're superior to everybody. They're so smart. There's no problem that they cannot solve. So if there's a problem that they will not and cannot solve, they will deny that problem. You understand? Now, I grew up, the 20th century gave us communism, gave us fascism, and gave us liberalism. We realize that communism is bad, and it's more or less gone on our planet. I lived in communism for a long time. When nationalism goes bad, goes dark, it looks like this. We no longer allow literature from other countries. So we couldn't have books written by authors that lived in foreign countries. Our music is superior to everybody else's music. So on the radio and on TV, they only played Romanian music. You couldn't even own a plastic bag, a plastic freaking bag that came from another country, that had a print on it that gave it away that it's from a foreign country. Because our bags, which by the way, we didn't have plastic bags, were so superior to other countries' bags, and so on and so forth. Now imagine this. If you truly lived in a nationalist country, a pure nationalist country, where we are the best, we are the most superior, then we only use our products in everything. So does that really lead to a superior country? To a superior life of being? No, it does not. It leads to a delusional country, a delusional life of being. And by the way, if you are not going to allow books from other countries, then you really shouldn't use the Bible either. It was written by Middle Eastern brown people, definitely inferior to us. So it's ridiculous, it's crazy. And once it takes hold in a country, it just snowballs. It snowballs and it snowballs. And then people start not trusting each other. Then pretty soon the informants are encouraged, and there's informants. It's a horrible, horrible way of living. That's communism there. Fascism wasn't any better either. So we thought we gave, we did away with fascism. It tends to reappear. And then liberalism. And liberalism right now is in danger. And we are in the 21st century, and nothing else has really emerged yet that it is powerful and has a real answer to the problems that currently we are facing. So here is something that is unique to human beings. It is our storytelling ability. It is our storytelling, and it is our ability to also believe these stories. Now, one of the greatest stories that humanity has ever told is money. We are saying that here is this green piece of paper, and for this green piece of paper, you will give me 10 loaves of bread. You will relinquish a house and give me a house if I give you enough of these papers. That paper in itself holds no value. The value is only in here. I just think that $200 worth should buy me that much goods. Goods that actually has value. Bananas have values. Bread has value, that has sustenance that I need to eat in order to survive. If I eat the dollar, I'm not going to survive. So money is the greatest story that humanity has ever told, And the reason it worked, because globally we were willing to believe this story that we have told. So if we have an issue right now that we are facing, it is global warming, it is artificial intelligence, and it is nuclear war. Then what we need to do is tell a story that globally people can unite behind and be willing to apply themselves in a positive way to heal the planet, to save us from nuclear war, and to rein in artificial intelligence so that humanity does not lose out to it. A story. We need a new story. And very importantly, we need nations to think globally and be willing to cooperate. So, when we go to the voting booth, we must consider and we must vote for politicians who are willing to cooperate globally. If they tell a story of nationalism and going backwards in time, they have no future vision, they just talk about a great, amazing past, they're not worthy of our votes. We must have and must find politicians who have a vision for what life is going to look on this planet in 2050 and have clear vision and a story that we can line up behind. Nationalism has its bright side and then has a huge dark side. It is okay. It is good for us to love our fellow citizens. That's the good side of nationalism. The bad side is that we must therefore hate the foreigner. And that is not true. Just for me to love my fellow citizen does not mean that I must hate the foreigner. It's both and. I love my fellow citizen. I also love the foreigner. I cooperate and I help my fellow citizen, and I also cooperate with the foreigner. We must have and we must tell a global story, and we must line up behind a global story so we can heal and so we can have a future. Our future is really, truly endangered. It's a serious problem, and it needs a serious solution that is healthy, sane, cooperative, and possible. So, yeah, we need to be very aware and awake to this moment, and do not go for simple solutions, and recognize that nuance is very important, and look for the nuanced solutions. The dark side of nationalism offers simple solutions. They are bad, we are good. The bright side of nationalism recognizes nuance, complexity, and embraces it. May we do that also. And so it is.